Hello, and welcome to the second part of our introductory Vexploration on communication. I'm Brent Peckover, and I'll be your guide for this Vexploration. Last week, we discussed the importance of effective and efficient communication, with the emphasis on being effective. We talked about how begin with the end in mind, one of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People, played a major role in choosing the medium, that is, through which methods such as email, text, phone, or in person, we choose to communicate, as well as giving thought to what we will communicate to achieve our goal. Communication rarely has a singular purpose, and should always focus on maintaining and building trust and respect. Before we continue our exploration on communication, do you know what the most valuable currency in the world is? Is it the US dollar, the euro, the Swiss franc? Wait, you're thinking, what does currency valuation have to do with leadership communication? People like to get paid for their contributions, and you might as well ensure you are paying them, at least in part, in the most valuable currency. Well, as it turns out, the most valuable currency in the world isn't financial. If you want to be a great communicator, understand that the most valuable currency in the world is appreciation. Learning to appreciate others' perspectives, contributions, and ideas will take you far. It's difficult to lead if no one listens to you. So as a leader, we need to communicate in ways that result in people listening to us. The irony of this situation is that the people whom we want to listen to us want us to listen to them. I had said in our last exploration that there were 2 concepts from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People we were going to touch on. The first, begin with the end in mind, and the second, seek first to understand and then to be understood. Have you ever noticed that people who don't feel heard struggle to listen with an open mind? They tend to be preoccupied with how to get their idea across. They listen, but with the intent to respond. They're waiting for the next pause in the conversation, so they can get back to shoving their perspectives and thoughts into the conversation. If you want people to listen to you, start by listening to them. A great way to do this is using active listening skills. Active listening is when you make a conscious effort to comprehend the message others are trying to share. There are 2 sides to accomplishing this: ensuring that you are paying attention and that you are providing cues to keep the other person engaged so they share their complete message. Comparing and contrasting is a great way to explore a topic. Here are some things you don't want to do during a conversation. Let your mind wander to another topic. Start planning your response while the other person is talking. Let the contrarian or attack defense voices in your head start. Provide nonverbal cues that will shut down the conversation, such as rolling your eyes, sighing, or interrupting. Here are some things you should try and do. Maintain eye contact and ignore distractions. Put away your cell phone. Subtly nod your head in a yes, I hear what you're saying manner. At appropriate times, encourage the person to continue with an yes, go on, okay. Paraphrase back what the person is saying. Ask questions to confirm and deepen your understanding. Control your body language. Lean in. Have you ever noticed when you're sitting across a table from someone and both of you are sitting in a laid-back position that if you stop the conversation and sit forward towards the other person, they will often mirror your action and lean in as well? Remember, there are 2 goals here. The first is to truly understand their perspective on the topic, and the second is to ensure they feel you have understood their perspective on the topic. Then and only then should you compose your thoughts about where to go from here and continue the dialogue. I attended a conference where I had the privilege of hearing Michael Bungay Stainer speak. He is the author of the book, The Coaching Habit. By the way, his book is fantastic and a very easy read. I highly recommend it. At the conference, he ran the audience through an exercise where he taught us what he calls the most important coaching question ever. He refers to it as AWE, or and what else? He had us find someone in the audience we hadn't met and ask what their biggest challenge was. When they had shared their perspective, we were not allowed to provide solutions, only ask, and what else? They dug deeper and explored the idea further. We repeated the exercise a second time. To wrap up the exercise, we asked, so what is your biggest challenge? In almost every instance, it seemed the understanding of the biggest challenge had changed. And what else is a great active listening question to help encourage conversation and exploration. We'll talk more about it in a future Vexploration on coaching and mentorship, but I encourage you to add it to your toolbox now. Safety highlights the interesting role that our feelings play in conversation. Our feelings are simultaneously a strength and a weakness. They can be a source of drive or a roadblock to progress. However, when communicating on a contentious topic, if I frame my point of view as a feeling, it's harder for the other person to dispute than if I frame it as a fact. For example, when you stood up in the meeting and proclaimed you solved the problem to management, I felt you were taking ownership and claiming personal success for the team's work. Compare this to, when you stood up in the meeting and proclaimed you solved the problem to management, you took ownership and claimed personal success for the team's work. The typical response to the second statement would be denial.
I didn't take credit for the team's work.
Your feelings are your own and no one else's. The only perspective someone can take with respect to your feelings is that your feeling is unjustified or invalid. If you're not familiar on how that tact works out, next time your spouse is angry at you for doing something, try telling them that their feelings are unjustified. Should you choose to perform this experiment, I recommend you have your shoes on, be close to an exit, and have hopefully signed a prenup. The advantage of feelings is that they are fluid. They can change with new information. The book, Crucial Conversation, by Patterson, Grenny, McMillan, and Switzler, discusses the concept of talking tentatively. The idea is that you put forth one interpretation of the information at hand, and then provide an opportunity for other participants to provide other interpretations with additional facts. Difficult Conversations by Douglas Stone, Bruce Patton, and Sheila Heen explores the idea that each conversation has three distinct parts that are all happening simultaneously in our mind during the conversation. A discussion about the facts, what happened, an analysis of how this makes us feel, and a conversation with ourselves relating to what this says about us as a person, also known as the identity conversation. This happens for each person involved in the discussion. As a leader, you suffer the same challenges. What can you do to help improve your performance when this happens? Be clear on what you stand for. In the Vexploration on the role of the leader, we said you need to reflect on why you want to be a leader. What is it about leadership that attracts, inspires, and defines you? Being clear on this will help you in these conversations, as these are non-negotiable tenets. Let these be your driving and guiding factors in a conversation. Let's take a minute to discuss the power of and. The power of and will come up in other Vexplorations in other contexts. For the purpose of communication, look to use it in place of the word but when adding your thoughts onto other team members' contributions. Consider the following dialogue of a team meeting where a solution to a problem is being reported.
The solution to the problem was energizing the flux capacitor.
But that alone didn't address the issue. It was replacing the plutonium fuel source that was key.
By choosing the word but, the original point was discounted. Listen to how using the word and changes the context.
The solution to the problem was energizing the flux capacitor.
And replacing the plutonium fuel source.
We talked about how questions engage higher level thinking. I cannot stress how important open-ended questions are to good communication. Remember the and what else exercise I recounted earlier? If you jumped into providing answers based on the partner's initial response to what was their biggest challenge, you would at best be solving a symptom. If you find yourself jumping in, talking, providing answers before leveraging questions to ensure you are providing the right answers, don't be too hard on yourself. Every day, remind yourself that you want to ask more questions and anticipate those situations where you need to do this. As an aeronautical engineer, program manager, Master in Business Administration graduate, certified professional accountant, and management consultant, I love solving problems. And I have lots of ideas and experiences to share and help make that happen. Yes, even someone as intimately familiar with the power of questions as I am, still struggles with using them to their full extent. This is why when I bought a new suit recently, I had embroidered on the inside pocket, close to my heart, the words, "Ask more questions." Each of us interprets information through our own unique lens, which is influenced by our past experiences, our areas of expertise, our emotional state, and many other factors. When we communicate, we typically do so by framing our thoughts, ideas, and feelings using these references. If you want to communicate effectively, you have to target your message to the audience so that when they interpret it using their lens, they receive the message as you intended them to. This is why multi-generational and multinational communication is so difficult. Common ground. Finding something you share in common and believe in with the other person can be extremely valuable for several reasons. Let's say both of you loved a particular TV show growing up. Being able to make reference to different situations or characters can immediately help one party understand the other party's point of view. We also tend to extend a level of trust to those we have something in common with. Have you ever had a salesperson find a common interest you share, and all of a sudden their perspective has more weight than it did before in the buying decision? Lastly, tackling differences is often easier from a shared place of understanding than from competing views. So, if you haven't already, find some common ground when you are communicating with people. This is why good salespeople almost always volunteer to meet their prospective client in the client's office. They're looking for cues that will lead them to establishing common ground. Before smartphones, people would show up for a meeting, and while they were waiting, they would talk with each other about their kids, vacations, hobbies, unrelated work challenges. Now with smartphones, when we arrive early, we sit on our email, check the markets, update our Facebook status. I believe there's a missed opportunity here. Next time you find yourself reaching for your smartphone before a meeting, stop. Resist the urge, and engage the others in the room in a casual conversation. Set the goal to learn something new about each individual. I want to leave you with one last piece of advice. In most cases, our objective is to make our communication sticky, so that people recall our messages hours, weeks, months, or perhaps years later. So how do we make our messages sticky? We've already talked about the power of questions and establishing common ground, which are two ways to increase stickiness. The other is the power of stories. For thousands of years, history and wisdom were passed down through stories. As such, our brain is naturally predisposed to getting engaged in and remembering stories. We'll cover more on this subject in a future exploration on good storytelling techniques. To become a better communicator, make your messages sticky. Put your smartphones away and build relationships with the people you are communicating with, so that you can learn to understand their unique lens and find common ground. Ask open-ended questions to develop a deeper understanding of their perspective, and remember that each conversation is really composed of three parts: what was said, how that made you and them feel, and what each of you feel that says about your identity. Leverage and manage feelings in your conversations, as they are both a strength and a weakness. And when dealing with sensitive issues, help people see what you are thinking and ensure they understand that you are open to additional information and alternative interpretations of the facts. Always maintain safety in your discussions and banish blame. Master active listening skills to help you seek first to understand and then to be understood. By practicing often and reflecting on what you could do differently next time to improve the outcome, you will become a more effective communicator. Strive to be a better communicator every day, always look to build trust, and go succeed. I'm Brent Peckover.